Well, we are 3 weeks into the very strange stories of the Bible. We talked about apocalypses on the first week, and last week we talked about witches and magic, so the only place to go now, of course, is demons. Now, one of the most destabilizing and very important things that I have learned on my journey of faith is that the Bible was not written for me. Certainly, it is appropriate that I read it, and certainly it applies to this day and time, but the original authors of these 66 some odd books were not writing to me. They were not writing to my time. They were not writing for my needs. The second most important thing that I have learned on my faith journey was that the present meaning of this book has to be linked to its first meaning, its first audience. Simply put, meaning only arises out of context, or the Bible can mean anything and nothing all at the same time. When we read the Bible, part of our faith journey is to find a way to not only understand the words, but to better know the first hearers, to link ourselves across time and geography to a people incredibly different from us, and to listen to them as they tell us about God. But that connection can feel muddled after 2,000 years, yes? So let me try and help reconnect us backward in times to some of our friends. Now, the Gospel of Luke, which is what we're reading from, there is a version of this in Mark, but we're reading Luke today. Luke was not the first gospel written, that was Mark. It's probably the second or third, and it contains many stories and accounts of Jesus of Nazareth that we cannot find in Mark or Matthew or John. Some speculate that Mary, the mother of Jesus herself, was one of Luke's sources. And other sources are a total mystery to us, even 2,000 years after. We call them, get this, Q. That's just what we call the sources we don't know. But that's not all that makes Luke a strange bedfellow with his other Gospels. Luke is actually written to a totally different audience than Matthew or Mark. Luke is not written to Jews. Matthew and Mark were written to a predominantly Jewish audience, very concerned with linking Jesus to the prophets who'd come before and even to Moses himself. But Luke doesn't care about that because Luke is writing to Gentiles. He's writing to non-Jewish believers who have found their way to Jesus. These Greek and Roman citizens, it doesn't matter to them that Jesus is like Moses. And in fact, throughout Luke, you'll see he has to go out of his way to explain Jewish words and phrases to people who don't know them. So, to connect with our 2,000 years gone Gentile listeners to Luke's compilation of the life and styles of Jesus, we need to know not just what we have in common, but what we don't. And maybe this won't surprise you, but there was a huge difference between them and us when it comes to the subject of demons. So, a little back and forth. I'm actually hoping you'll respond to me. What do you know about demons? What has popular culture told you? From Buffy, I have learned that demons can sing and dance. Where are demons from? Do you know? You know. They fell from where? Heaven. So what were they first? Angels who fell from heaven, right? Is that the prevailing idea? What else? Are they pretty? Are they ugly? Ugly. They have horns. Pitchforks even. Yeah, long fingernails. Like Tim Curry in Legend, right? Big and red. And it's a great movie. What else? Demons. Huh? They possess you, right? What else? Raspy, scary voices. When preachers come up against demons, is it like an equal fight? Like, what is it? Do they win very often? Against humans. Sometimes there's an epic battle, and hopefully the forces of good win. So, are you going to be mad if I tell you that has nothing to do with the Bible? Like really nothing. In Greek and Roman culture, the word we say is demon is spelled D-A-I-M-O-N, daimon. A daimon was kind of a generalist term for a whole bunch of things, which included the gods or goddesses, general divine powers, the divinity of a place or a thing. The idea of destiny and fate were demonic. Sometimes a daemon was an intermediary between gods and humans. Sometimes you would call the spirits or the souls of the dead a daemon, and sometimes it's just what you called a terrible disease. Whatever they were, popular opinion assumed that whatever they happened to be at the time, they were unpredictable, they were capricious, and you should probably give them food so they wouldn't get mad at you.
So
All men. You said it, I did not say that. Now, the first century Jews, when they looked over their scriptures, what we call the Old Testament now, they had to translate it out of Hebrew and into Greek. And when they did so, they took that word, daimon, and they applied it a little differently. Across many different texts, daimon was used in reference to goat-man gods. That's in Isaiah. Hey. Superhuman beings that either were or caused diseases, or abstract qualities like fortune or fate. That's it. Whatever they had in common, nonetheless, was daimons were what they thought other people worshipped as false gods. If it wasn't Yahweh, it was the daimon. Nowhere in the Old or New Testament are demons equated with angels, fallen or otherwise. That idea doesn't pick up steam until 300 years after Jesus. So it's fun, it's just not in the Bible. By the New Testament period, so of Jesus, they were merely understood to be unclean spirits, creatures that were taking place in the cosmic battle between God and the forces of evil and empire in the world. And knowing that gives us actually a way better toehold into this very strange story. This is no TV exorcist moment fraught with hand-wringing or feelings of powerlessness or this kind of implication that there's an equal battle of wills. Jesus literally just gets off the boat, meets a naked strange man who's been living in the graveyard, and calls the demons out of him. That's it. The Spirit knows Jesus immediately, calls him the Son of God, which is probably a little painful for Jesus because nobody else understands who he is at this point. And what he does is he begs not to be tormented. It even tries to wheedle a deal out of Jesus. Don't banish me, just send me into those pigs over there. And Jesus is a Jew and pigs are unclean, so that seems like a good deal. But it's not actually a deal. Because what happens to the pigs is they immediately all drown and die, and the demons are banished anyway. This wasn't even a contest. This was a total rout. For the Jews and the Romans hearing it, mostly this is a wholly unremarkable scene because Jesus is not the only exorcist in these days. They both accepted the reality of demons, their penchant for causing pain and misfortune, and the fact that they could be exorcised. We know in the Gospel of Mark that when Jesus sends out his disciples, he's like, oh, also exorcise demons in my name. Thanks. And everybody's like, okay, that's a thing we could do. Except there is one part of the story that is absolutely remarkable. This demon, this unclean spirit, has a name, and its name is Legion. It's like if the demon's name now was the Marines. Legion was a very, very specific military term. It referred to the fighting contingent of Rome, a force that numbered 6,000 men. This name is not an accident. If the Greeks and the Romans and the Jews all understood that sometimes a daemon was the spirit of a particular people, and Jesus meets a daemon named after the military might of Rome, then in this exorcism, Jesus is shown to not only have the power to liberate individuals from Rome, but the power to exorcise Rome itself. This exorcism is more than just an act of mercy. It is a radical act of insurrection against the empire. This empire, which, by the way, economically oppresses his people. This empire from which his people have been searching for deliverance for generations. This empire that routinely denies them their humanity, which colonized their homeland, which makes them question themselves and their future, that every single day inflicts deep and pervasive injuries on the soul of the people. In light of that, it shouldn't surprise us that the neighborhood's response to the healing of this man is, "Oh my gosh, could you leave, please?" This exorcism is a red flag planted right in the middle of the town that Jesus opposes Rome and that he has the power to overcome them. If Jesus stays, it is possible that Grasham becomes ground zero for revolution. But Jesus leaves, because the exorcism he will perform on Rome will not be an exorcism by military power. The kingdom that is coming through him is the kingdom of God. Taking time to learn about this world of the first listeners of Luke is more than just intellectual exercise, is more than just being able to say in a crowd, "Well, you know, demons didn't mean that," was what you're thinking. It teaches us a new way to understand the story, and I am captivated by this, by the idea that empires possess land and thereby possess the minds of the people they have colonized. And that this colonization of the mind leads to suffering and ostracism and madness. Do I need to recount all the studies to you of how the stress of living in racist systems leads to exponentially more physical and mental health problems for people of color in the United States? Do I need to lay out for you, again, all the statistics of what living in a heterosexist society leads to exponentially more physical and mental health crises for LGBTQ people? Or how our classist systems gaslight the poor into blaming themselves for poverty and the chronic health and mental health conditions that poverty always comes with? The land of Grasham was possessed literally by a Roman legion, and this man of Grasham is possessed by a demon legion, and I cannot help but think of all the individuals amongst us who are suffering from similar possessions. We see your neighbors and our friends possessed by the cruelty of the systems around us, and those systems that seek to rename the people that they have bound. You know, like how the formerly incarcerated are always called felons and they can't get jobs, and a lot of places they can't even vote. Or like systems which get people hooked on drugs because it's financially beneficial for the companies, and when they finally shake their addiction to drug before it kills them, they are always judged by the culture around them as weak. All around me, I see how many suffering people named Legion there are, bound to the oppressive spirits of our age. But standing alongside this original audience of the miracles provides me also with an understanding for what happens next for Christians in our age. I see a way forward with Jesus. Mere moments after getting off this boat, Jesus sees a man possessed, colonized by a spirit of possession, and frees him. And like all the miracles of Jesus before, it functions in two ways at the same time. It is both an individual act of mercy and healing, and it is an outright challenge and rejection of a system that would violate human minds. This is the work we are invited into. To join hands with Jesus in the work of the kingdom of God that does not let possessed people stay possessed by the empires around us. to learn to immediately recognize the acute need from the people in our midst, to not be afraid of them, to relegate them to the tombs of our cities, and to enter into their healing, knowing that we will thereby be challenging systems of oppression which cause the hurt in the first place, because the oppressive systems are not doing it by accident. To understand this teaching is to no longer let people identify themselves with the oppressive forces which have fragmented them, and is to no longer give this world permission to rename the people after that which tortures them. We don't let this happen because that is not the work of God. And I am honestly filled with courage when I realize how nonchalantly Christ has just given us the power to liberate our neighbors. Oh, when you go out, exorcise demons, okay? What? He trusts us. He trusts that we will do so, and that we will do so no matter if the liberation is even understood by the communities that we practice it in. It doesn't matter. I am challenged by this story to be more vocal in my own spheres of influence about the power and the freedom in the kingdom of God, especially in comparison to the chains and the powerlessness and the oppression of our present political and economic systems which feed off of us. This is a text of triumph. This is a text which sees the powers of evil and empire not as insurmountable, not as inexorable, but as weak before the power of Jesus. And whether demons or daemons or unclean spirits are amongst us, I tend to be a little more Pentecostal on this, but you don't have to be. Whether it's like the early Christians thought, or merely as a way to think about our present systems and structures in this world, we don't have to be afraid. Together, by the power of Jesus, we are called into liberation, to liberate our neighbors and cast out all the forces which seek to fracture, fragment, oppress, and drive them out. And by liberating our neighbors, liberating ourselves, we defeat the empire called Legion. This is what we invite you into. It is not just individual salvation to be a Christian. It is the work of liberation for all people. Will you join me in that as we cast out each and every legion?